at E.Soldiers. This might be the coolest Tumblr I have. Entangled Teen sent it to me. It has my name on it. And a knife. Who is knife wife now, bitch? If Inej is watching this, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean it. If you can hear the fan going in the background, I'm very sorry, but it's the only thing that's keeping me from melting into a puddle of goo right now. And I know my audio is like iffy at best, but it was either gonna be this like slightly tinny noise or it's gonna be the echoiness of my apartment, so bear with me while I still figure this out. I managed to read 10 whole books this June, and that was without even a single drop of rum. June was Pride Month, and I tried to read all queer books. Not that I don't regularly do that, but, you know, I was trying to make a point of it this month. I did read one straight romance, and that was because I was working with the company, and as somebody who also is attracted to men, unfortunately, you know, I like straight romances too, and I had a good time reading it, so it's not like I'm not going to recommend it. I have a feeling this is going to be a longer video because I have a lot of thoughts and I have a lot of feelings, so without further ado, grab a drink, grab a snack, and buckle up while we discuss everything that I read in the month of June. I don't know who said you need to save the best for last, because that's stupid. I want to talk about the book that I loved the most. I gave this 5 stars. I finished it last night, and that was Juniper and Thorn by Ava Reid. A couple of my friends on TikTok, specifically Hobbit's Library and Elle Reid's books, like, were just hyping the utter shit out of this book, so I was so excited, and I was like, if this doesn't live up to my expectations, I'm gonna chuck it off a roof or bury it in a forest. And thank God I don't have to do that, because this spoke to my dead, curdled, macabre soul to a degree that I cannot explain. This is House of Hollow meets Deathless. It is a gothic horror retelling of the Grimm's fairy tale, The Juniper Tree, and it is disgusting, and I loved it. This is an adult urban historical fantasy that follows Marlin Shin, a young witch, and her 2 sisters, who are trapped in their crumbling Victorian mansion by their tyrannical and xenophobic wizard father in a city that is rapidly expanding and urbanizing. But at night, she sneaks out to go to the ballet and quickly falls in love with the new primary dancer. But her father's rages are growing more and more dangerous as she falls deeper and deeper in love, and there is a big clash of old world magic and new city. This whole book is so filled with tension, especially religious trauma, family abuse, assault, death, body horror, holy shit. And everybody in this book sucks. Like, fuck you, especially fuck you, fuck that, fuck this, get fucked. And cannibalism was not on my bingo card this June, but here we are. I know not everyone's gonna like this. It has some very weird writing and some very intense themes, and it is not appropriate for anybody under 18, but holy hell, Ava Reid is now on my list of auto-buy authors. Goddamn. Okay, that was a lot. I'm gonna give you guys a bit of a palate cleanser. Here is an adorable contemporary that I got sent by Raincoast, so thank you Raincoast for sending me a copy of Homefield Advantage by Dahlia Adler. I loved her first book, and I love her second book so much. It was so cute! This is a sweet queer girl romance between Amber, the hopeful captain of the cheerleading team, and Jack, who is the new quarterback that's brought to her school. Jack is replacing the quarterback who recently died a few months ago, and everyone has this hero worship of him, even though he wasn't that good of a person. So the cheerleaders and the football team co-conspire to take Jacqueline down. But the only problem is that Jack and Amber are falling in love, and Amber doesn't know whether to go with her true self and feelings, to out herself, or to go with the status quo of her small conservative town. Fun fact about this book is that it was actually inspired by this photo because this is the first female football player on the Florida team, and that's what this book is supposed to be, and I love the fact that she took an image and made a full story out of it. And I'm Canadian. I just found out that my university has a football team like 3 days ago. I don't know anything about football. I know you wear the big things, the pads, and then you have like a helmet, and then you run and you like throw a ball a certain way. You put spin on it. Is that right? I'm not sure. I know nothing about football, and I had a great time reading this. I thought it really tactfully described the feeling of being queer and not sure if you should come out to people, knowing that they might look at you differently even though they are your close friends and family. But also I love that there are some supportive queer parents in here. Like, YA is not known for having good or alive parental figures, and the fact that we have this like supportive queer parents, it's so great. Now we're gonna talk about the one straight romance that I read this month, and that was Under the Oak Tree by Suji Kim, which is a Korean manhwa through the Manta app, who I was working with this month to do some promo for it. Shy and sheltered Lady Maximilian is forced into a political marriage by her tyrannical father to marry Riften, who is a fairly unknown knight, and the night of the wedding he leaves for a 3-year military campaign. When he comes back 3 years later, the 2 spouses still know nothing about each other, and he wants to bring Maxie back to his castle in Anatole. Once she gets there, they start to learn more about one another, and, you know, the passion that they have for each other can't be tamed, and they slowly fall in love. The artwork in here is phenomenal. It is... My pizza interrupted that, excuse me. Like I was saying before, I was so rudely interrupted. The artwork on this is just so gorgeous. Plus, Riften is constantly shirtless, and thank the gods for that. I love me an arranged marriage and falling in love by proximity trope, which you will see again later, but I love how this did that and kind of breaking down those conceived notions and learning to trust one another, and it's really sweet. I also deeply relate to Maxie, not just because we happen to look alike, but because her favorite food is also potatoes, and man, I love a potato. Now, they're not paying me to say this part, but the Manta app's goal is to bring more Korean media to a North American audience. So they are all in English, but they read as part of Korean media, and if you're not familiar with Korean tropes, you might be a little thrown off. So like for me, there is a bit of dubcon in this that I didn't vibe with, but if you're okay reading that, then that's totally fine. But I had a really good time reading this. In the couple of days between getting this first sponsor email and setting up a call to talk about the video, I had already read all 2 seasons. Another absolute star of June was this beautiful advance copy that I got from Tor of A Strange and Stubborn Endurance by Foz Meadows. Now, this comes out at the end of July, and oh my god, do not run to the bookstore to get this masterpiece. Minor noble Vel is forced into a political marriage with the princess of an opposing kingdom, but when it comes out that Vel is gay, the kingdom just says, oh, that's fine, and decides to marry him off to the princess's brother instead. So now Kay and Vel are reluctantly engaged, despite knowing nothing about one another. As well, Vel comes from a society that very heavily disapproves of homosexuality, and so his viewpoints on himself and going into this new culture of Kay's that is very open and accepting of all types of relationships has this really interesting internal conflict and external conflict. Even in Kay's more liberal city, there is still a rebellion brewing over the fact that their society does not want this marriage, and so there's an assassination attempts they constantly have to dodge, which can put a damper on any engagement, or so I'm told. And I have to say there are major trigger warnings in here for homophobia, sexual assault, PTSD, and self-harm. It is not an easy book to read, and I loved it so much more because of how it handled those themes. It's a Byzantine-inspired fantasy world where Vel is trying to learn the new language and all these new customs while also not getting murdered. It doesn't drop you straight into the story either. It allows you to get to know the characters and their mental states and how everyone's around them is feeling, and then the action begins. Plus, the horse girl in me is having a field day. And I don't know if I was reading this at a particularly emotional point in my life, but like, this book gave me so many feelings and emotions. So yeah, I would die for either Cathari or Veselin. And I know the phrase OTP hasn't been spoken since like 2013, but oh man, if there's an equivalent now, Gen Z, let me know. And another book I read that is very similar to that unfortunately now comes out in August, thought this was supposed to come out in June, my bad. Tor sent me a copy of A Taste of Gold and Iron by Alexandra Rowland. We have more forced proximity between lovers, except now it is a prince and his bodyguard set in an Ottoman-inspired fantasy world where the two of them have to team up to help solve problems within the capital while there is political unrest. Our shy and reclusive Prince Kadu has to team up with Emperor, who's the new bodyguard that he is given, and the power struggle between them is so funny because Kadu is very shy and he has panic attacks, which is like, oh my god, my baby, I just want to give you a hug. But then Emperor is also so tied to duty that like he's just trying his best because Kadu is like, I'm gonna go do this thing, and then Emperor is just standing behind him like, sir, no, please. Okay. It is so detailed and intricate and personal. Like, you really get to know each character and their emotions. There's a super intricate family structure system in this world that I also think is quite interesting, because one of the people that we get into an altercation with is the body father of the queen's daughter, but then she'll also have two other kinds of fathers. And I love that we get a totally unique family structure and currency structure and even year structure within this book. I did think one of the main subplots was a little lacking though. Like, one of the selling points of this is that royals can touch taste metals so that they can tell if there is counterfeit coins, and lo and behold, there's some counterfeit coins going around the city, and that will ruin the queen's reputation if that gets out. It wasn't incorporated in here as maybe as much as I thought it was going to be, even though that is like the main point of the investigation of why the two characters are talking to one another. And the ending was a little anticlimactic, but then again, this also isn't a flamboyant book, so it did thematically work. But overall, I love this book so much. The characters are so good, the world building is so detailed, and if Damat Evemir Hossakadam Mahisti S. Be Effendi can go to therapy, so can you. What a responsible gay icon. Alright, so next up is a book that's not going to be that much fun to talk about, but I did read about 65% of this, so I wanted to include it because I also have thoughts and feelings on it. So I read the majority of Wrath Goddess Sing by Maya Dean. There was a whole thing about this book having transphobia and a slavery plotline, and unfortunately, people on the internet are right. And I am so disappointed because this was pitched as a queer retelling of the Iliad and Achilles and Patroclus, except Achilles is a trans woman. And from the beginning, this is a very interesting, very literary retelling that I was on board for. See, we had a strong start. There was a whole temple of trans priestesses to Aphrodite, really good depictions of the Roman Empire at its height and how wide it spanned and how many cultures it had in it. And when people said that there was transphobia in it, I felt it was more like a parallel of Achilles and her having that internalized misogyny and homophobia, of seeing something else that she wanted in other people. And the slavery thing, at first, I was like, okay, yes, we do have an enslaved black trans man. However, my thing is that, like, okay, the Roman Empire had slaves. They didn't just have slaves of color. They had slaves all over the empire. So it's like, okay, not great, but, like, historically accurate, question mark? But then also, like, this is a story that has goddesses hatching out of golden eggs, and, you know, we're going to war and having visions. Like, this is not a historically accurate book. And then in the last half, we go to Egypt with Patroclus's sorcerer wife, and it just gets real tokenizing and, like, exoticizing everything. And that was, like, all those things put together, I was like, I can't do this. And then the book just gets weird, like, people are hatching out of eggs and we're getting propositioned by dolphins to have sex, kind of weird. I also don't really like Achilles. Her internal monologue when she's going to war is very selfish and kind of, like, dismissive of other people, despite herself knowing that she is, like, a marginalized person. Like, I did not like how it went. So I get where the author was going, but I did not vibe with this book at all, and I'm really sad about it, but I've already had, like, 2 weeks to make my peace with it, and I'm gonna take this back to the store. And then another book that Tor sent me that I finished in a day, because it's nice and short, that was The Border Keeper by Kirsten Hall, which is a nice little novella about gods and other dimensions that gets real squirrely and wet. This is about a not quite mortal man who meets a god at the crossroads between this realm and others, asking for a favor. But instead he gets pulled into a war between her, the border keeper, and all these other demonic realms that are slowly crumbling politically. First of all, I love the idea so much of, like, one goddess who has been lost to space and time being the border keeper between our dimension and the demon realms. Her sandblasted cabin in the middle of the desert serves as a reflection of her, and now that we have a guest in the house, like, how it's changing and how he's helping people remember her. This has similar writing vibes to House of Hollow, but also to The Servant Mage, which I read a couple of months ago, except this is just, like, the ante-up version of that. This is the perfect book for you to live out your astral projection fantasies. And I don't know if I can look at crabs the same way ever again. This book is so gross that I don't know if I would have read a full novel of this world. It's very unique, it's very dark, it's very, like, squishy in a strange way that I cannot explain. So very cool concept, but I'm just not the kind of person that likes to read novellas, so if you are, maybe you'll really like this. Also, quick side note, a lot of people ask me, like, what are those plants behind you? They're fake. That's how I can keep them alive. Alright, next up is one that a friend recommended to me, and that is my writer friend, Alex, aka AJ Vrana, who writes The Hollow Gods. Quick plug there. She recommended that I read Certain Dark Things by Silvia Moreno Garcia, and this book, writing gorgeous, action impeccable, vibes immaculate. This is a neo-noir about vampire cabals and Aztec gods in an alternate history futuristic Mexico City, where our main character Domingo is a homeless youth who catches the eye of Adel, who is a runaway heir of a big vampire clan. The two of them team up as a rival narco-vampire clan is trying to track down and kill Adel, and Domingo is trying to escape Mexico City. There's corrupted law enforcement, genetically modified dogs, and neon lights abound. So basically just a regular city. I don't blame Domingo for falling in love with Adel so quickly, because woo! Girl, me too. She is so cool. Like, I want to be her. I would let her kill me and I would thank her for it. I love Silvia Moreno Garcia's other works, especially if you liked Gods of Jade and Shadow. I think you're really gonna like this very unique take on vampires, especially futurism vampires. Now, I will say that even though this had old world gods and vampires and crime bosses, I didn't quite like it as much as her other ones. I thought it fell a little flat, but that might also because I'm not super into like neo-noir. Like I wanted more of everything. I wish this was longer. That being said, if this ever got turned into a movie, I would be number one in line. Second to last is an interesting happenstance. I did something that I almost never do, and I rebought a book that I didn't like. And I blame this on the last book that I'm going to show you, but second to lastly, I read Neon Gods by Katie Robert again. I bought this for my birthday last year in June, and I'm gonna let past Rachel say some stuff. You see this? Betrayal. I trusted you when all of you guys said that this was a good Hades and Persephone retelling, and I am shook, and not in a good way. The most relatable thing about this book is the fact that Hades really likes hardwood floors and respects crown molding. Like, yes, king, we love an interior designer. And I could get behind the sex club thing, because, like, I think that actually would be really cool. Although, I do have to say I did enjoy how thorough and regularly consent was displayed, so I give her credit for that. So after hearing all that, you might be saying, Rachel, why in the world did you rebuy something that you didn't even like? And you know, I just really love me some Greek god smut, okay? I still like the idea that the gods are not gods, but they're positions of power, and so each title gets handed down or taken by different people. So in this, Hades is the unseen ruler of the lower city, and Persephone is the socialite daughter of Demeter, who herself is like a power-hungry politician. This book was definitely more enjoyable the second time around. Being an adult means getting excited over Hades' fascination with hardwood floors, and I'm pretty sure that all of Katie Roberts' characters are queer until proven straight. I will still say that the opening interaction of Hades and Persephone is still a bit awkward. Okay, so real reason that I bought this again is because Sourcebook sent me a copy of Wicked Beauty by Katie Robert. Okay, this bitch, parenthesis, respectfully, I loved this book, and I'm just as surprised as you are. Now, I haven't read Electric Idol, and I'm trying really hard to find a copy, but all my bookstores in the area are sold out. So her Dark Olympus series does have a through line, but you don't have to read all of them to be able to understand the story. That being said, I think I missed a couple things in this book because I hadn't read that, but I'll get it soon. This also centers on Achilles and Patroclus and Helen of Troy. Do you see where I'm going with this? I've said it before and I'll say it again, all love triangles can be solved with either a duel or a threesome. This also has one of my favorite things ever, which is a competition. So our main characters are drawn into a competition to decide who is going to be the next Ares, and all of them have different reasons for wanting to gain that title. Patroclus is there, like he's in the competition, but he's really just there to support Achilles, and like, what an amazing boyfriend. I do really appreciate that Achilles and Patroclus's relationship is established before we bring in Helen, and I like that both of them, you know, struggle with that, but then also we get to see how a third person works in that dynamic and how she works individually and how they work together, and I thought it was so well done. From the beginning, I have to stand Helen. Her entrance into the competition is just like, I'm Helen Kylos and I'll be shooting for me own hand. And the competition is American Ninja Warrior meets Knockout. Like, it is intense. Achilles has a bit of an inconsistent character, especially what he's thinking versus how he acts. Especially about and towards Helen. But Patroclus and Helen fully make up for that. I love them both so much. I love their relationship dynamic. I love that we got a healthy poly throuple, and it's just so sweet, but also hella spicy. Oh my god. Yes, I am now a Katie Roberts stan, and you know what? I'm not mad about it. And that is that on that. Overall, I had a great reading month. I found some new favorites. I had a lot of fun. I got to read a little bit outside my comfort zone, and that was super interesting. And I know publishing has its own set of guidelines and timelines, etc. But, like, I gladly would have waited 4 more months to be able to read Juniper and Thorn, like, when it was stormy and dark and, you know, those, like, rotting things. Because that, like, fall time is the optimal time for those kinds of, like, super dense high fantasy novels that I've read this month. Whereas June, it's like, it's 30 degrees outside and you're sweating, but here, we're gonna talk about, like, this winter realm, and, like, politics. And I'm like, it's summer, I don't want to think about this stuff. Although Homefield Advantage, though, that was cute. I would recommend that in the summer. So yeah, leave in the comments below which ones you're excited about. Maybe leave what your favorite book of June was. I learned from TikTok, you know, the app in which I bow down to as my overlord now, said that apparently 1,000 books means that you have a library. So today I counted, and I'm only at 370. So that means I have to keep going, obviously. So I'm gonna need 530? That's 8. I don't know how math works, although if you saw my book haul from last week, you'll know that that's another like 20 books right there that I could read and put on my shelves. Also, I've just had a thing for yellow eyeshadow lately, so if you've seen it in like all of my videos and all of my TikToks, no you don't. You know where to click to like the video, you know where to click to subscribe. I hope you guys are all having a nice day wherever you are, and I will see you all next week. Bye!